After legendary sports commentator Bob Costas gave a blunt but fair assessment of the MAGA cult, Fox News snowflakes Brian Kilmeade and Harris Faulkner complained and clutched their pearls about how mean people are to Republicans, conveniently forgetting that they and other conservative thought leaders and elected Republicans are openly cruel to Democrats all the time. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. I saw some of these earlier today and my eye just started to twitch because this is something that the Fox Propaganda Network has been peddling for years, right? This cry-bully victim complex where they give themselves and elected Republican officials and other conservative thought leaders license to be as openly divisive and cruel as possible. I mean, think of Donald Trump in both of his presidential campaigns and now this third one. And that's okay, according to them. That's fine. But if you give just a little bit of it back, they clutch their pearls and they cry and they can't handle it because they, not liberals, not progressives, they, conservatives, are the ultimate snowflakes. So before we get into Fox News' reaction, these are the comments from Bob Costas, which had them so triggered.
You come at this from a position of not wanting to see Trump get elected. You should state that at the outset. True?
Yes, absolutely. He is by far the most disgraceful figure in modern presidential history. He's only become more disgraceful since 2016 and since 2020. He is a bubbling cauldron of loathsome traits, and it's only those who are actually suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which is the way they and Fox News and all the rest of MAGA media try to brush aside all the legitimate criticisms of Trump. You have to be in the throes of some sort of toxic delusion in a toxic cult to believe that Donald Trump has ever been, in any sense, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, or ethically fit to be president of the United States. But his supporters are locked in on that.
No lies told. I mean, that was, again, a blunt but fair assessment of the MAGA cult, and which is basically what the Republican Party has become. So with that in mind, again, Harris Faulkner and Brian Kilmeade, two of Fox News' biggest snowflakes, they were not happy with Bob Costas' comments. We're going to play the reaction here and again, unpack it together.
Brian.
I know Bob Costas. I know how bright he is. Best sport. By the time he was 34, he was the best sportscaster in the country, doing all the biggest events ever. I know that's exactly how he feels. But I think it's so shallow of him to think that you can have your feelings and put down 74 million people along the way. People who are supported, especially him coming from a place where people support their teams and their players and their boxers and their athletes, and people are loyal. There are people loyal to him for reasons they should be respected for and analyzed. Because
but
once
everybody
again,
should
that's
be
the
respected.
Right.
Like, I mean, Democrats want
playbook.
their voters to be respected. Can you imagine if a Republican candidate called them all deplorable?
Can you imagine if something like that were to ever happen, as though it like never has, and when in fact it indeed it's happened? I mean, what's funny is, again, the Fox Propaganda Network, their memory is so selective. This is a Republican congressperson, a person who's been candidate for office, Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is what she has called the Democratic Party.
She says that are over the top, like
the Democrats are a party of pedophiles.
I would definitely say so. They support grooming children.
They are not pedophiles. Why would you say that?
Democrats support, even Joe Biden, the president himself, supports children being sexualized and having transgender surgeries.
So you have a sitting Republican congresswoman, a close ally of Donald Trump, the Fox News and Republican Party cult leader, openly referring to Democrats as the party of pedophiles. That's just one example. We've discussed a gazillion other examples in previous videos. But I love just Harris Faulkner, like, I mean, can you imagine if Republicans ever, they do it all the time. They do it all the time. And again, note the asymmetry, the outrage in Brian Kilmeade's voice. Like, you all should try to understand us. 74 million people support Donald Trump. Yeah, well, 81 million people, which is more than 71, I might add, for the mathematically challenged. 81 million people voted for Joe Biden. There are more people in this country who generally vote Democrat and vote for Democratic presidential candidates than Republican. Why is the burden always on the majority to understand the minority? How about we try to understand each other? How about we meet halfway? How about I try to understand you, but you try to understand me? But Fox News doesn't want that because they're not comfortable with and probably couldn't handle the burden of trying to, in good faith, understand why more people generally disagree with them than agree. They just want, because they're snowflakes, they want special treatment. They want to be respected, but they're not obligated to respect other people, and they very rarely do. I say you and I just viciously and consistently laugh and mock that double standard and say that we're not going to comply. If you want us to understand you, you better start trying to understand us as well. Otherwise, then we reserve the right to say whatever the hell we want because that's a right you all exercise on the regular. CNN actually, last month, I don't know if I played this clip for you, but a CNN commentator really broke it down in a fascinating way. Again, this double standard.
I think this negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign.
And I think that Jamie Dimon had a really valid point, and Democrats would be wise to listen.
I think it's a good point. I think it's one that I think you could see reflected in a very different approach that you heard from the former president in Indianola and Iowa on Sunday. Take a listen.
So we have to have fair and free elections, or we don't have a country. But these caucuses are your personal chance to score the ultimate victory over all of the liars, cheaters, thugs, perverts, frauds, crooks, freaks, creeps, and other quite nice people. That's a mouthful.
I was being sarcastic there. It's the thing that I don't understand about this, and I'm not criticizing Jamie Dimon or that view of what he's saying or what you're saying about Hillary Clinton and the deplorables candidate. It's like Trump says awful things about Democrats and supporters of Joe Biden and supporters of Hillary Clinton and everything like that. Way worse than deplorables or you don't like them. And no one seems to care. The deep offense that is taken when Hillary Clinton says deplorables or people call Donald Trump supporters MAGA people is not reflected. And I would like to know why.
I, too, would like to know why, because we reserve the right to be as offended and as aggrieved as anybody. But, of course, we're not, because generally speaking, those who are liberals, those who are on the left, are actually made of sterner stuff than snowflake Republicans and snowflake conservatives. Jessica Tarov, again, one of the few sane voices on the Fox Propaganda Network, also made this case to Kayleigh McEnany, and this other guy here is a Trump supporter, I think it was probably last year, but she made this case very compellingly as well because they tried to sell the same bill of goods, this idea that, Democrats just need to be more civil, like Republicans. Republicans are so civil. Democrats are just so mean and condescending. This is what Jessica Tarlov had to say, and I think it's amazing.
A while ago, obviously Hillary Clinton is someone who is incredibly important to the party, and I have defended her comments in that interview, talking about the fact that Democrats are so far from being in a cult on a comparative basis to Republicans. It's actually laughable, and I do really struggle to find it in my tiny liberal heart to feel terrible for Republicans when we get called things like communists, socialists, thugs, pedophiles. Donald Trump called Democrats every name in the book. It is part of the Republican playbook to demonize us and to make it seem like it is the end of the world if Democrats are in power.
Did you see Kayleigh McEnany's face, by the way? Just well, that doesn't count. It does count. This asymmetry of expectations makes the Democrats' job, which is already challenging due to the disbursement of power and the number of levers of power in this country and institutional advantages that Republicans enjoy, like the Electoral College, for example. Democrats already have a pretty challenging job, but this wild asymmetry of expectation in which conservatives and centrists and Republicans, they all grade themselves and one another on a curve, right? Again, they get to say and do whatever the hell they want. They can be as condescending and as cruel as possible, but everybody else has to treat them with a disproportionate level of respect and empathy and civility? No. And this is something I've talked about before, and I've also talked about in the comments section on my own channel when people sometimes get upset that I can be so mean to elected Republicans and conservative thought leaders. But here's the thing. I refuse to adhere to double standards. I have a lot of Republican friends and family members, conservative friends and family members, and I show them respect because they show me respect. It's a reciprocal thing, right? Because there's love and respect there. But in terms of conservative thought leaders, in terms of Fox News hosts, in terms of Republican elected officials, they're part of and they lead. They're not just part of, they lead and they energize and make it worse. The cruelest political movement in American history. And so this idea that the rest of us are just obligated to ignore that and be super kind to some of the most cruel and inhuman people in American politics doesn't sit well with me. If you and I choose to be gracious or respectful to conservative leaders and Fox propagandists and Republican elected officials, so be it. But otherwise, I'm sorry, folks. Again, I refuse to adhere to that asymmetry of expectation, and I would advise you all to take that position as well. Let me know what you think in the comments.